Want to know the latest in soccer? Then listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Soccer Podcast. From MLS, the World Cup, and the Premier League, we've got you covered. The latest updates, the hottest matches, and news on the league's top players. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Soccer Podcast.
David Beckham scores the goal to take England all the way to the World Cup finals.
Listen now.
Welcome back to the GSMC Soccer Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Sam DeCoste, and I am thrilled to be back with you today talking about the wonderful game that I just saw between Atalanta and PSG. Oh my goodness, what an absolute classic in Lisbon. The stuff of dreams if you're a PSG fan. It is an absolutely unforgettable night for PSG, and we're going to talk all about it tonight, and I can't wait to get into it with you right now. So, to preview today's show, we're going to talk about the Champions League heavyweight showdown between Barcelona and Bayern Munich coming on Friday. I'm going to tell you who's the favorite to win, what to expect in the game plan, and I'll give you my score prediction. We'll also revisit the transfer market, because there are a lot of rumors and gossip to discuss today, including the latest on Jadon Sancho and the soap opera in Dortmund. And I'll also tell you about the latest signings, including a signing for Spurs and for Liverpool. And stick around to the end of the show when I'll pay tribute to one of the game's greats. Last week, former Champions League and World Cup winner Iker Casillas announced his retirement from football at age 39. A true legend of the game, one of the game's greatest goalkeepers ever. We're going to talk about the legacy of Iker Casillas and his peaks and troughs at Real Madrid and Spain, because he has one of the most interesting stories in a footballing career that you can imagine. But first, we have to start with the Champions League. The quarterfinals began on Wednesday evening in Lisbon, in the home of Benfica, the Estadio da Luz. And I have to tell you, I visited the Estadio da Luz just a few months ago, right before the pandemic began around the world. I got a tour of the stadium, the home of Benfica, the stadium where Real Madrid won La Decima against Atletico Madrid. You may remember the header Sergio Ramos had in stoppage time against Atletico to break the hearts of their dreaded rivals. It is an amazing stadium. It's a beautiful venue, and I didn't know a few months ago what story that it would tell just a few months later. So the quarterfinals began between Atalanta and PSG. Atalanta were the only Italian side remaining in the Champions League because Napoli and Juventus were knocked out in the last round, Juventus going out to Lyon and Napoli losing to Barcelona. Meanwhile, PSG, the French champions, coming off a 5-month layoff from the cancellation of the Ligue 1 season. So you had Atalanta and PSG going at it. The game finished 2-1. The scoring opened in the 26th minute from Mario Pasalic. A Croatian young international opened the scoring for Atalanta. And then, out of nowhere, in stoppage time, 2 goals from Marquinhos and Choupo-Moting knock Atalanta out of the Champions League and send PSG into their first semi-final in 25 years. It's an unbelievable story and an unbelievable game, and we're going to talk all about it because this is an instant classic. And I don't even know where to start, but let's talk about Neymar to start, because if you watched at the beginning of the game, you must have seen Neymar in the 3rd minute with a one-on-one opportunity against the goalkeeper Marco Sportiello, and Neymar one-on-one, great through ball, he was off to the races, and he just needed to pick his spot, and Neymar couldn't even hit the target. And it looks like Neymar was primed for one of those days, and he certainly was, because although Neymar really kicked on in the second half, arguably he had the worst first half in his career on Wednesday night. He could have scored 4 goals in this game. This game could have been a rout for PSG, and it could have been over very early because PSG had the better chances of the game. They had more chances, and Neymar was at the heart of almost all of them. Neymar could have scored 4 goals in the first half. He missed a one-on-one with his very first shot of the game. He had a couple harder chances to score, but the first one was the easiest. But Neymar just couldn't hit the target in the first half if it could have saved his life. He just didn't have his shooting boots today. It was really shocking to see such an appalling performance from the Brazilian tonight. It wasn't the Neymar that we're used to. Part of that is Neymar didn't have his man Kylian Mbappe in the game for the first hour, and it really showed because Neymar was not really the same without Mbappe because the injuries were really ravaging PSG in this game. Di Maria was suspended, Verratti was injured, Mbappe wasn't at 100% so he couldn't start the game. But for the first half, the story was all about Atalanta and the fairy tale, but it was also about how PSG weren't up to the task again because before the 90th minute when this game turned around for PSG, I was prepared with all of my notes and all of my anecdotes to tell you about how PSG have absolutely faltered and how Tuchel needs to go in the morning and how PSG have failed once again because you look at the history of PSG and all the quarterfinal exits and the round of 16 exits that they've been through, all of the heartbreaking losses that they've suffered over the years. The Barcelona loss from 3 years ago when they got destroyed in the Camp Nou and gave up a 4-goal lead from the first leg. This was the type of heartbreak that PSG have endured for years. And it looks like it was going to be another version of the same story. It was going to be the same old story for PSG getting knocked out in the quarterfinals. But this would have been the mother of all of the stories because Atalanta, of all the teams, they've lost to teams like Manchester United, Barcelona, Manchester City, Real Madrid, and Chelsea. But Atalanta is as amazing as they were this season and as great of a season as they've had. They are not up to the quality of any of those teams in the past few years, and it's not even close. The gap between Atalanta and the top clubs in Europe is so wide, although this season has been prolific for them, and they are a great story. And they held on for dear life for most of this game because Atalanta was leading for 75% of this game. It was Atalanta in control. PSG really took control of the second half in possession, and they had significantly more goal-scoring opportunities than Atalanta. So really, it was a matter of PSG going at it, throwing everything, throwing the kitchen sink and the farm at Atalanta. They had bodies back behind the ball. They couldn't really get on the counter. They couldn't really create any goal-scoring chances because PSG were desperately looking to get that ball through the box to get a killer run in there and to find an open man in the box to score. It was that way for the whole second half, and it was really difficult for them until Mbappe got substituted into the game. He got into the game in the 60th minute as the PSG super sub, and once Mbappe got into the game, the whole game opened up for PSG. Neymar and Mbappe were starting to click with some killer passes because Neymar and Mbappe, it's not talked about enough how their chemistry is superb with one another, and it really is one of the reasons that they're in the semifinals and that they've had a good season in Liga and that they've had a good season so far in Europe. But Neymar and Mbappe started to click in the second half. Goal-scoring chances came a dime a dozen. Every 30 seconds, PSG were getting off a shot. Sometimes they just soared out into the stands. Sometimes it was a save by Sportiello. But PSG really weren't threatening the goal as much as they were really putting the pressure on Atalanta. And it looked like PSG just didn't have that finishing touch tonight. It looked like it was going to be one of those nights that you just didn't have your shooting boots on and that PSG just weren't going to be able to score. And it was a miraculous night. PSG really didn't generate a lot of saves out of Sportiello tonight. It was a lot of off-target shots. It was some terrible shooting, especially from their main man Neymar. But Mbappe opened the whole game up. And ultimately, in the 11th hour, when it was now or never, PSG delivered with an all-time comeback. A comeback for the ages. And just think about the heartbreak that PSG have endured over the years. Like I said before, the most notable of them all is 2017 when PSG had a 4-0 lead over Barcelona in the first leg in Paris. Then they go to the Camp Nou and they get absolutely shellacked, giving up 6 goals in the second leg, losing to Barcelona in the pretty much the last kick of the game. It was that kind of miracle that PSG have endured for years. Last-minute goals, last-minute winners, comebacks. Even last year, Manchester United knocked out PSG after PSG had an away win in Old Trafford. And then pretty much the last kick of the game, Marcus Rashford sends Manchester United into the quarterfinals and knocks PSG out. In their UCL history, PSG last year, round of 16 loss to Man United. 2018 loss to Real Madrid, round of 16. 2017, round of 16 to Barcelona. Quarterfinal to Manchester City. Quarterfinal to Barcelona. Quarterfinal to Chelsea and Barcelona again. It's been so many years of just falling short. PSG have never really been able to get over the line into the semifinals. This is their first semifinal in 25 years. And before this game was over, before the 90th minute, before PSG scored, I was prepared to tell you about how Thomas Tuchel was probably going to be sacked in the morning. It was going to be a carbon copy of what happened in Turin just a few nights ago when Maurizio Sarri didn't even see the morning before he got sacked. It was that kind of tale, and wondering, would Neymar or Mbappe leave? Are they sick of falling short with PSG? And what do we make of this club who's just fallen short time and time again? But because of a miracle, Thomas Tuchel can keep his job. PSG can march on, because this Champions League season, as we know, is like no other. COVID-19 has changed so much about how football is played, how sports have been played. No fans, shortened seasons, no second legs, all the games being played in a neutral venue in Portugal. What makes this year so interesting is that the second legs are gone. Imagine if PSG didn't win this game, because PSG really had to kick on in the second half because there was no second leg to save them this year. If Atalanta won, that was it. It's win or go home for the rest of the Champions League from the quarters to the final. So this Champions League trophy is there for the taking more than it's ever been in the past few years, because you could talk about the contenders. For example, Real Madrid, Liverpool, and Juventus. None of them are in the quarterfinals. They all left in the round of 16. You have teams like Atalanta, Leipzig, and Lyon, all in the quarterfinals of the Champions League, besides Manchester City and Barcelona and Bayern, who are all on the same side of the bracket, by the way. This Champions League is wide open, and it's anybody's game, especially with one game, because let's look at it this way. PSG are 2 wins away from winning the Champions League. Just 2 wins, they reach their Everest if they win 2 more games. They're probably going to play Atletico Madrid in the semifinal, unless RB Leipzig pulls off a miracle on Thursday. But PSG, they could do it. Why not PSG? Because this game was going to be very difficult for them. Now, I told you in the last podcast that Atalanta were the favorites in this game, because while PSG are better at their game and when they have the whole starting 11 there, tonight was difficult for them because Di Maria, Verratti, Cavani, none of them were there, and it was going to be much more difficult for PSG to beat Atalanta when you had a front 3 of Neymar, Icardi, and Sarabia. And they managed to do it, and Mbappe came in and changed the game. Now, if Mbappe didn't come into the second half, and Mbappe didn't have as fast of a recovery as he did, which is another fascinating story, how Mbappe could recover so quickly, Mbappe's absence from this game would have given Atalanta that edge to get over the finish line. Atalanta would have won this game if Mbappe was still injured, if he wasn't fit. But Mbappe looked fantastic. He looked like 100%. He changed the game. I don't know if starting the game in the semifinal, if he would be 100%, but he'll have a few days rest, and he'll be more fit than he was tonight. And tonight he looked pretty spectacular when he was put on the field, and he changed the game single-handedly. It was the sequence of Neymar and Mbappe to Choupo-Moting which really won the game for PSG in the 92nd minute. Just unbelievable stuff. I can't believe what we just watched in Lisbon tonight. And now, for PSG, you have to wonder, can they go all the way? Because they have a great chance to do it. They're the first team to book their place in the semifinals. If they play Atletico Madrid, they would have a really tough game for them, because Atletico Madrid are stiff, They're very disciplined. They have some great attacking players. Diego Simeone will have them ready to go against PSG. And on the other side of the bracket, they would play either Manchester City, Barcelona, or Bayern. And a game between one of those teams and PSG would be an amazing final to watch. And that would be so entertaining. But for PSG, you just have to wonder, after all these years of heartbreak and coming up short and just falling to miraculous comebacks in the round of 16 and quarterfinals, is this the year that PSG finally gets it done? In the year of COVID-19, in the year of no second legs, in the year of no fans, why not PSG? PSG has as much of a chance as anybody to win this competition. As you saw, Atalanta nearly won this game, so why can't PSG win the Champions League when it's all said and done? Now, PSG do have some work to do. Atalanta did give them problems tonight. They were opened up at the back plenty of times, and Atalanta did lead for most of this game, so it would be short-sighted to say that PSG are now the favorites, and they should feel energized and have the momentum to go forward and win this thing. But there are plenty of things to build off of for PSG to go forward into the semifinals. Again, what an unbelievable victory for PSG. They are in the semifinals of the Champions League. This is the stuff of dreams if you're a PSG fan. And it's time. It's time for PSG to enjoy being on the other side of heartbreak for once. But now let's talk about the side that suffered the heartbreak tonight, which is Atalanta. And you do have to feel for this side because this is one of the all-time collapses in Champions League history. It's up there with Atletico Madrid just a few years back when they were leading in the final for most of the game, and then a Sergio Ramos header in the 90th minute broke Atletico hearts, and then it sent them for a devastating, humiliating loss in extra time in the final. It's also up there with La Remontada when PSG collapsed against Barcelona in 2017. This game will live on as one of the great chokes in Champions League history, but I don't want you to remember it as a choke because Atalanta are a fairy tale story and they don't deserve to be remembered like that. This is an unbelievable story for Atalanta. This team has scored now 99 goals this season, which is third in Europe, only behind Bayern and Manchester City. This is a team bigger than the sum of its parts. One of the most unbelievable stats that compared Atalanta and PSG before kickoff. I saw this from ESPN FC today. In the past 20 years, going back to 2002, Atalanta have spent just $385 million, while PSG just spent $392 million on Neymar and Mbappe combined, and that was in one transfer window. Atalanta are an example of why you can't just buy the Champions League, because Manchester City and PSG have been trying to do it for years, but it's teams like Atalanta who work together, who work for each other. Those are the teams that capture the hearts of fans around the world, and those are the teams that really make strides in world football. But in the end tonight, they were ousted by individuals, because it looked like for most of the night that PSG were just a bunch of egos and individuals who weren't on their game tonight, and it was going to fall apart for them completely. But in the end, it was the individuals who won this game. It was Neymar and Mbappe who had those last moments of magic and creativity that really broke Atalanta right at the end when Atalanta were holding on for 90 minutes and they nearly crossed the line. But let me tell you a little more about Atalanta beyond their 3-4-3 tactics and their very aggressive attack, because Atalanta were playing with a purpose this year, especially in the last few months. Atalanta, if you're not familiar with their club, they're from the city of Bergamo in Italy, which is about 30 miles away from Milan. And back in the round of 16, they played Valencia, and they played in the San Siro stadium, which is not their home stadium. That's where Inter and Milan play their home games. Atalanta moved their home game against Valencia in the Champions League to the San Siro because their home stadium, their home ground, isn't even big enough to hold that big of a capacity for the biggest game in Atalanta's history. And they're a very old club as well. So you have the city of Bergamo, which is the host. It's a very small town with the host of this great football team who's been in Serie A for a very long time. And for Atalanta, their home city of Bergamo was the first city in Italy to lock down from COVID-19. They were also one of the worst affected cities in Italy with one of the highest death rates from COVID-19. Even Atalanta's manager tested positive for COVID-19, and it was a lot of days of struggle and darkness in Bergamo for the fans of Atalanta, for the people of Bergamo, for the team, for the players and coaches who tested positive for COVID-19. There were some dark days in Bergamo, and when football finally returned, Atalanta played with a purpose, and they wanted to give back to their city, and they wanted to make their fans and the citizens of Bergamo smile, to forget about the misery that they've endured during the pandemic. They wanted to give back to their city, and they wanted to distract them and ultimately win for them. That's what made Atalanta special this year, because of all they've had to endure from COVID-19, them being the first city to lock down in Italy from COVID-19. And as you know, Italy was one of the biggest epicenters of COVID-19 at its peak back in March and April. Atalanta played with a purpose, and they nearly crossed the line tonight, and they nearly made their first ever European semifinal. Nonetheless, this is still the greatest season in Atalanta's history, making the quarterfinals of the Champions League, being 5 minutes away from beating PSG and Neymar and Mbappe. What a night that could have been. And this is what makes them special, is they are a team. They're not just a bunch of individual egos. They don't play for the money. They don't play for the glory. They play for each other. They play for the city of Bergamo. They play to make their fans smile. And it's a great story. And their football complemented their drive as well, because this is not a team. This is not like any other team in Italy, or any other league for that matter, who's fighting to stay in the league, who plays a park-the-bus defensive style of football, a pragmatic tactic style. This team goes for the win. This is a very aggressive team who goes forward all the time, who's looking to score goals at will. And like I said, this team scored 98 goals in Serie A this year, which is unbelievable. And it's Italy, where Italy defends for their lives, and somehow Atalanta set the league on fire this year, and they made it all the way to the quarterfinals, when also they lost their first 3 games in the Champions League and looked like a shoo-in to be eliminated in the group stage, which is hard to imagine now because they made it so far. But commend Atalanta on a season well done, because Atalanta will live on as one of the greatest stories that football has seen in the 21st century, and is certainly a story that I'm sad to see is over now. But for PSG, it's joy, it's jubilation, it's relief. How relieved are PSG fans that they're finally on the other side of this heartbreaking story that they've been on the wrong side of for so many years. And for PSG, they move on to the semifinals, and they will play either RB Leipzig or Atletico Madrid in the semifinals, and the winner will be determined on Thursday. What an absolute night to remember if you're a PSG fan. Coming up after the break, we're going to preview the game between Barcelona and Bayern Munich coming on Friday night. Don't go anywhere.
Are you looking to get your college football fix? Looking to get the latest news on your favorite school's team? The GSMC College Football Podcast is your ticket to all things college football. Join us as we talk college football, from the national championship, the college rivalries, the bowl game, to the Heisman Trophy. To which conference is the best? We've got you covered for the Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, the Pac-12, ACC, and everything in between. Download the GSMC College Football Podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Welcome back from our commercial break. We just finished our recap of PSG's unbelievable comeback against Atalanta, and now we're going to pivot over to another Champions League quarterfinal that we will watch on Friday between 2 Champions League heavyweights, between Barcelona and Bayern Munich, 2 of the most decorated clubs in European football, a battle of the FCBs. but only one FCB will prevail and move on to the semifinals of the Champions League. So, Barcelona coming off a 3-1 second leg win over Napoli, Bayern with a 4-1 win over Chelsea, and for Bayern, they're coming off a 7-1 aggregate victory over Chelsea, which is some pretty glorious company if you're Bayern Munich. They share that company with Germany with their 7-1 win over Brazil. But both teams will face off in Lisbon in the Estadio da Luz, and this is the first time that these teams have played in the Champions League since 2015. The last time they played, Barcelona prevailed, and in that game, it ended 5-3 on aggregate. Barcelona with a 3-0 win in the Camp Nou in the first leg, and after that, Bayern really didn't have enough to come back. Before that, they played in 2013 when Bayern won the Champions League, and they won the treble for that matter. Bayern came off a 7-0 aggregate win over Barcelona with a 3-0 and 4-0 win in the two legs, one of the most dominant showings between two clubs of such high stature in European football, which is unbelievable to think about even now. But for Bayern Munich, going back to that 2013 team which won the treble, which destroyed Barcelona, that was a Barcelona team with Messi really ascending into his prime. That was a team with Iniesta and Xavi when they were at the height of their powers. And Bayern were also at the height of their powers, obviously. They had Robben and Ribéry, and they had Mandzukic, and this is also when the German defense was really at their prime as well. Manuel Neuer was really inserting himself in the conversation of one of the best goalkeepers on the planet, and their backline was asserting their dominance as one of the best defensive units in world football as well. 2013 was the best version of Bayern Munich that we've seen this decade, and this year is probably the best version of Bayern Munich that we've seen since then. And if you can imagine that they're better, it's hard to compare those two teams because this team is not the same as the one that won the treble back in 2013 because this team has Lewandowski. Lewandowski played for Dortmund in 2013, if you remember. And this year, Lewandowski is the source of 40-plus goals and counting for Bayern Munich this season. And he is the engine that makes Bayern Munich tick. He is the one that drives Bayern Munich, and when he's at his best, Bayern are at their best. And while in previous seasons Bayern have really depended on Lewandowski, and the supporting cast really hasn't been as superb, or the players like Ribéry and Robben have been losing their legs, or Coman has been slowing down from injuries, and Thomas Müller has really seen his career take a nosedive, but this year, the supporting cast around Lewandowski has been superb. You have players like Coutinho and Perisic and Gnabry, and all those players are really depth players. They don't even start every game. One of the best players for this Bayern Munich team is Alphonso Davies, who is just amazing. The Canadian international signed from Vancouver just a few seasons ago. He's taken the Bundesliga and the Champions League by storm, and he has transformed the way Bayern play. He's given them that next edge of pace that Bayern have been lacking for a very long time. And it really makes them so dangerous. Not only Davies, but you have Müller, who's also having a career season. Thomas Müller finished the Bundesliga season with the same amount of assists as Lionel Messi in fewer games in the league to play. La Liga has 38 games, and Messi finished with 21 assists. Müller finished with 21 assists as well in just 34 games. So Thomas Müller at the top of his game. You have Alphonso Davies, Serge Gnabry, players like Perisic, players like Gnabry. You have a great defense. Manuel Neuer has been having a great season as well, showing that age is just a number when you're a goalkeeper. 34-year-old Manuel Neuer is having a phenomenal season as well. Bayern Munich are really, arguably, including Man City, the most complete team on the planet right now. They have everything going for them. They have the goalkeeper, the back line, strong midfield, and the attack is world-class because even if you discount Lewandowski, the supporting cast, the wings, the fullbacks, you have Müller pegging in a few killer passes, and you have the deadly finisher of Lewandowski, who is as ruthless of a finisher in world football as you can ever find. And it's going to be very difficult for Barcelona to face up against them and of an upset. Because make no mistake, Bayern are huge favorites. Not just favorites, they are massive favorites. You could say 3-goal favorites because the gap between these two teams is so wide. And Barcelona pundits and fans have been talking about how Barcelona can really stand a chance in this game, how they can keep it close. And what they do is they really reminisce about 2015, and they think about the last time that these two teams played in the Camp Nou and how Barcelona just absolutely played them out of the park. But these two teams are totally different now, and Barcelona is nowhere near as good as they were back in 2015. That was when MSN was at the height of their powers. That's when Neymar and Messi were clicking. That's when Suarez was in his prime. And even though Suarez is still around, he's not the player that he was in his first season in the Camp Nou, and he's not the player that he was when he was at his best in Barcelona when he won the Golden Boot either. It's pretty oblivious to consider Barcelona can make it close just because of recent history. And it's not even that recent, because that game was 5 years ago and a lot has changed. And that's the last time Barcelona has even won the Champions League. That's the last time that they've even made it to the final. So just because Barcelona has done it before, that's not a good enough reason to say that they'll do it again. Because even if Messi is at the top of his game, and people are saying that Messi needs to have one of those nights to be able to get to will Barcelona into the semifinals. And I'm not saying Messi won't have one of those nights, because maybe he will. And he had one of those nights back in 2015. He scored 2 goals, including one of the most memorable goals in Barcelona history, when Barcelona put a few Bayern defenders on their backsides, including Jerome Boateng, and chipped Manuel Neuer for their second goal in that first leg. It's one of the best goals Messi's ever scored, and it was absolutely humiliating for Boateng, who was really, at that time, one of the best defenders in the world. Boateng's not going to have a mistake like that again. I don't care how great Messi is even now. Boateng's not going to mess up like that again. That was an all-time highlight reel. That was an all-time Sports Center #1 play, but I don't think Messi has another night like that in him. And it's not as much because Messi is older and Messi won't have it in him, but Messi doesn't have the supporting cast to make it happen. Messi doesn't have Iniesta anymore. He doesn't have Suarez or Neymar. Well, he has Suarez, but Suarez is not as good as he used to be. Neymar is gone. The defense is worse. Barcelona are really a team of individuals. We talked about PSG in the last segment and how PSG are just a team of high profile and expensive egos. Well, Barcelona are much worse than that, because you have players who really are big name value players like Messi, Busquets, Piqué, and Suarez and Griezmann, but really put together, when you put them all together in a starting 11 and put them on the field together, at least under Iker Casillas as manager, they really don't have any answers, and they really don't have any cohesion. They can't create chances. They don't have any fluidity. They can't defend. It's really been a story of Ter Stegen making great saves every game, and Messi saving Barcelona with a few goals in the meantime. But Messi, even if he has one of those nights, Barcelona are going to need a complete performance from all 11 players on the field to even stand a chance against Bayern. This is one of the biggest mismatches that I've seen in a Champions League quarterfinal between two teams as big as Barca and Bayern. Because I don't know what you can say. In every way Bayern have a strength, Barca's weaknesses play right into them. Let's talk about Lewandowski and the crosses coming into the box. Barcelona will not have any answers to stop that. Barcelona's defense has taken a huge step back this year. You can blame the tactics, you can blame age for how Piqué is really slowed down. You can blame Iker Casillas for not setting the defense up well. But one thing which really opens up Bayern in this game is the way Barcelona play with their fullbacks, because you have Jordi Alba, who is a left back by position, but he is one of Barcelona's most important creative players in the way that he goes forward and has his chemistry and link-up play with Messi and Suarez and Griezmann. So Jordi Alba is going to go up front a lot, and he's going to leave his left back, he's going to leave the left flank wide open for players like Gnabry and Coutinho and Perisic to run at. So he's going to leave a lot of space on the left side, because when Barcelona go on the attack and Bayern win the ball back and they go on the counter, it's off to the races for Bayern, who have so much pace. And even though Jordi Alba has pace, he is going to be aggressive. Barcelona are going to play their game, and Jordi Alba is going to be exposed plenty of times. So the pace is a mismatch in the way that Barcelona are aggressive with their fullbacks and how they go forward. It's going to overwhelm Barcelona with Bayern's pace. Bayern's pace is world-class. They may be the fastest team in the world right now, at least the fastest team left in the competition. But the counterattack is going to be a huge part of this game, and it's not going to be for Barcelona because Barcelona are not going to do very much on the counterattack in this game. They don't have the pace. It's really going to be Messi and a bunch of other guys. It's not going to be Griezmann or Suarez or Jordi Alba helping out. But when Barcelona are caught out and they give the ball away, Bayern are going to go on the counter, and it's going to overwhelm Barcelona's back line, and they won't be able to cope with it. And that is probably going to be the source of the most goals in this game. You could say set pieces, penalties, free kicks, maybe, but really the source of this game's goals is going to be undoubtedly from the counterattack when Barca are caught out and when Bayern have the ball going on the counterattack. That is where the game will be won by Bayern Munich, I think, in my opinion. And there are so many weapons for this Bayern team that they can exploit this weak Barcelona back line. Like I said, Muller had as many assists as Messi this season in the Bundesliga. He can have a killer pass or two, and he has amazing chemistry with Robert Lewandowski. You have the pace on the right and the left and right flanks. You have players like Joshua Kimmich too, who is a great defender, and he can also go forward very well and create so many chances for Bayern. I will say for one thing for Barcelona, one thing that will help them out in this game is the one leg. Like I talked about earlier with Atalanta, one leg really played into the hands of Atalanta. These 90-minute games play into the hands of the underdog because all you need is to be good enough on one night. You just need to be luckier. You just need to have your shots fall in at the right time, and that is what can separate teams in these extenuating circumstances. And for Bayern, it would be definitely easier if this was two legs. If this was a two-legged affair, Bayern would absolutely have their way with Barcelona, and they would advance pretty much a guarantee. But the one leg leaves it open to a miracle if there is one. But I don't think there is a miracle in this one. It could happen. The second leg, the one leg in this game makes it easier, and it gives Messi a job just to do it good enough for one game and then worry about the next game when it comes. But I don't think Barcelona has it in them because besides Messi, who's going to come up with the goods for this team? It's not going to be Griezmann because Griezmann has been a shadow of himself all year. He's been a shadow of the man who scored 30 goals with Atletico Madrid. He's the shadow of the man who's a world champion with France. He is not the same man that he used to be. It may be the heaviness of the shirt because the Barcelona shirt is a very heavy one in world football, and that has brought out the worst in some players, and it has brought out the worst in Griezmann. Luis Suarez has had an injury-ravaged season, so he won't be at the top of his game. The midfield is weak. They have a distraction with Arthur, who couldn't even pass his COVID test after going rogue back in Brazil. You also have Busquets, who is really going to be one of the keys to the game. Busquets is their number 5. He is the solid defensive midfielder, the one to keep everything in front of him, the one to stifle any Bayern attacks in front of the back line. That is his job, and that's been his job, and he's been great at that when he's been at his peak of his international and club career. But Sergio Busquets is much older than the player he used to be at his prime. He's got a lot of games under his belt. He's experienced, but with experience comes heavy legs, and with heavy legs comes much slower pace. And against Bayern, I think that is one of the key matchups. Kimmich and Gnabry and Davies and Lewandowski, that attacking trident, that attacking force versus Sergio Busquets. That is an absolutely massive mismatch in this game. It's probably the most decisive mismatch that you can talk about in this game, in the sense that Sergio Busquets is not going to be able to keep up with the pace of Bayern. And the pace of Bayern is one of their biggest strengths. So like I said, the strengths of Bayern play right into the weaknesses of Barcelona. The pace, the defensive prowess, the attacking ability. Because even if Bayern struggle to find the back of the net or hit the target, who's to say Barcelona is going to take advantage and score on the other side? I don't think Barcelona can score against this defense. Manuel Neuer is still a great goalkeeper. We've forgotten about him really and how great he is because of all the injuries that have plagued him over the years and how his World Cup was very bad and how the last few seasons Bayern have struggled, losing to Liverpool last year. But this back line is very good, and I don't see how Messi and co are going to break through this. Messi can do it by himself if he has support, if he had Suarez and Neymar at their prime, but he doesn't. He doesn't even have Iniesta. He doesn't even have Rakitic when he was at his best. The midfield is weak, the defense is weak, the forward line is pathetic. Barcelona are underdogs in every way, and this is by far the worst Barcelona team that we have seen this decade, and their season could be over as soon as Friday. And I don't see any way Bayern do not get the job done, because Bayern, one thing they don't do is they don't lose to teams that are worse than them in the Champions League. They may fall short to the big dogs. They lost to Liverpool last year, who ended up winning the competition. They lost to Real Madrid a few times when Real Madrid went on the competition. Bayern Munich are not going to lose to this half-baked version of Barcelona. It is just not going to happen. You can do it in FIFA. You can imagine it all you want. You can reminisce in your nostalgia from 2015, but it is not going to happen. Not this year. Maybe next year for Barcelona. But Barcelona's season will end, and it will end ugly. I say, for my score prediction, Bayern Munich will win this game 4-0. It is going to be ugly. Barcelona are going to be wiped off of the pitch. Barca will not be able to cope with the pace of Davies or Gnabry. Muller's going to thread the needle on an assist or two, and Lewandowski will be the dagger into the hearts of Barcelona when it's all said and done. I say Lewandowski notches about 2 goals, Muller with at least 1 or 2 assists, and Barcelona will go out. And imagine if Coutinho scores a goal in this game. Coutinho, the Barcelona loanee, who's out to Bayern, who really didn't do the job at Barcelona, who were really too impatient to let Coutinho really gel and try to get his foot into the Catalan way of playing. It didn't work out in his 1.5 season at Barcelona, but imagine if he has a goal that really knocks out Barcelona with his loan team. That would be a storyline no Barca fan wants to see, but it is the storyline every neutral fan would love to see, and it could be pretty epic if we saw something like that. It would also mark the end of Quique Setien's career. I think Quique Setien's career is going to be over sooner rather than later. I don't think he'll make it to next season, at least he shouldn't. He is not the man to lead Barcelona into the future. Whether or not the board makes the move to get rid of him this year is really up to what happens on Friday night or beyond if Barcelona miraculously do win this game. It'll also mark the end of the infamous checkerboard jerseys for Barcelona, which for most of the fans in Catalonia were really never a fan favorite. So that will mark the end of that infamous jersey as well. I say Bayern will knock out Barcelona. Their season will end in very one-sided fashion, and we will see Bayern in the semifinals where they will play either Lyon or Manchester City. Coming up after the commercial break, it's time to talk the transfer market. The latest on Jadon Sancho, Kalidou Koulibaly, and Kai Havertz. Don't go anywhere.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
from our commercial break. You know what time it is? It's time to talk transfers. It's the middle of August. We're in the middle of the summer, which means clubs are out pulling their checkbooks out of their pockets to bring in some new players. And it's time to revisit some of the hottest transfer sagas of the summer. And for me to tell you about the latest rumors swirling around the world and the latest completed deals that have happened since our last show. And there's no better place to start than the most defining transfer saga of the summer. It's Jadon Sancho. It is the prolific player for Dortmund who is linked with Manchester United. Let this be a declaration that this Jadon Sancho to Man United deal is a fully fledged transfer saga now. It is an official soap opera in world football for the transfer market because this is a story that will not go away, even as much as Dortmund want to say that this story is dead. Let's talk about what goes into this, because last time I talked to you guys in the last podcast, I talked about how Dortmund set a deadline for Manchester United, because Dortmund realized Man United were not meeting the price tag that they set for Sancho, and that Dortmund would not sell their player for anything less than 120 million euros. Man United have consistently fallen short of that price tag, and Dortmund will not let him go. They are being very stiff about this. And they set a deadline for Monday, August 10th. Essentially, Man United had until Monday, August 10th, to negotiate a deal with the club, to negotiate a transfer fee, if they were going to decide to pay the 120 million that they wanted, because if they did by that point, they would open the door to Sancho going to Man United. If not, then Dortmund would shut the door to any possible sale for Sancho to go to Manchester United. Because at this point, Dortmund are not in the Champions League. They're getting ready for the season. The Bundesliga season starts back up in September, and the players have already reported back to the club for their preseason training and scrimmages. And right now they're in Switzerland. They took a private jet over there, and Jadon Sancho was on the private jet. Basically, the club's position is that it's past August 10th. Jadon Sancho is a Borussia Dortmund player right now, and he will not switch clubs at this point with the season so close, because Dortmund don't want to lose continuity or lose a player that they imagine having with the season starting so soon, which makes it very difficult for Man United, because Dortmund have really shut the door on a possible transfer. At least that's what they say. Now, is this story over? Can we all just walk home and pretty much move on with our lives? Of course not. It's not that simple. Jadon Sancho, this story is not going anywhere. This is still a story to watch, because although the deadline has passed that Dortmund set on Man United, Jadon Sancho could still leave in the situation that Man United do end up paying the 120 million that Dortmund are asking for. In that scenario, it would be smart to sell Sancho for Dortmund. The thing that Dortmund are really combating in this transfer situation is that they would lose face if they did in fact sell Sancho, being that the deadline has passed. They would lose a lot of face. That being said, if they were to cash in on the 120 million price tag that they set on him and make all of that money over one of their diamonds in the rough players that they discovered, well, it would save a lot of face for Dortmund if they did that. It definitely would not really hurt their club from a public relations standpoint, or they wouldn't lose face if they make that much profit, because they would really better themselves as a team. So Dortmund really have nothing to lose at this point, because Dortmund, they could make a lot of money for Sancho if they sell him. Now, they're not going to sell him for anything less than they value him. So if they do sell him, they will not sell him unless they get every possible penny out of Man United, or any other club for that matter, for what they believe Jadon Sancho's value to be. But if they don't sell him and they don't get that money, well, they're going to keep Jadon Sancho, who is one of the best players in the world. He's lit up the Bundesliga this year with 20 goals and 20 assists just in that last season. Jadon Sancho is a very talented player, and I can assure you Dortmund are not looking to sell him. They will if Man United give them money that they want, but they haven't offered that money yet. So right now, Jadon Sancho looks primed to stay at Dortmund. He looks primed to continue in Dortmund, not go get his transfer to Man United this summer. Now, that could change, obviously. Man United have really begged for a sense of sympathy from Dortmund because the summer of COVID-19 has really made things more complicated for all clubs, not just the big clubs, but the clubs that want to spend big and want to expand and get new players like Man United. Man United want Dortmund to go easy on them and to lower their price a little bit and just accept their 70 million bid for Jadon Sancho because they don't have as much money as they would have last summer or next summer because the pandemic is still prominent and no fans are in the stands. They're not breaking even, but Dortmund couldn't care less. It doesn't affect them. Why would they lose Jadon Sancho for 50 million less than they would have wanted just because they want to be nice to Man United? That is not in the club's interests at all. Man United really have it all to do. They have to pay up the full fee if they really want Jadon Sancho. Besides that, Jadon Sancho has agreed to the move. Sancho and Man United agreed to personal terms a long time ago. So the player wants the club wants the player, but the club with the player will not sell the player to the other club unless they get all the money that they believe he is worth. And so far, Man United have fallen far short of that price tag, and they've also not come by the deadline. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. It would certainly be interesting if Dortmund do in fact sell Sancho. But again, don't expect this transfer to happen unless Man United finally come up with the full 120 million that Dortmund are seeking. As far as Dortmund is concerned, Sancho has a contract running through 2023 and he intends to see out that contract, and the club intends that he will see out the contract. That is it for the latest Jadon Sancho saga. I'm sure we'll talk about it on the next show, and we will certainly, if there are more updates to bring you, and I will certainly bring you the news as it materializes. Next transfer saga we're going to talk about is Kalidou Koulibaly, the prolific Senegalese center back, currently plays for Napoli. World-class defender. He's been at Napoli for a number of years, and he's highly valued, highly coveted. He's always been wanted by the bigger clubs outside of Italy and all across Europe. In fact, back in 2018, Napoli turned down an €80 million offer for Kalidou Koulibaly to sell to Manchester United. The owner of Napoli, De Laurentiis, turned down the offer, refusing to get rid of one of their best players because Napoli did believe that they were still one of the best teams in the world, and Napoli weren't in the mood of a selling club just to sell their best players for money because that wasn't what they believed in, and they didn't want to let a player of Koulibaly's quality walk out the door. Although COVID-19 has really changed a lot of that. Napoli's financial state is stretched very thin, and the circumstances are very dire for Napoli right now. The club's budget has been stretched very thin. They failed to qualify for the Champions League this year, so Napoli can't compensate for the lost revenue due to the pandemic with Champions League football because the prize money for qualifying for the Champions League group stage isn't there. Napoli had a terrible season in Serie A. They will not be playing European football next season. They fell well short, and there was a very wide gap between Napoli and the top four this year. So you don't have Napoli in the Champions League compensating for all that money. And all of these players with high wages, and the players like Lorenzo Insigne and Kalidou Koulibaly and Dries Mertens, who are making very high wages, Napoli need to balance the books right now. And so that opens the door to possibly selling Kalidou Koulibaly and bringing in that money to really keep themselves afloat during the pandemic, which doesn't look like it's going to be over anytime soon. So Napoli are very much in a bad position, and they honestly may need to sell him. It's very hard to imagine Koulibaly staying from Napoli's point of view because they desperately need to offload his wages because he is one of the greatest defenders in the world, certainly one of the best in Serie A. And so offloading Koulibaly would really balance the books for Napoli. The club is in trouble. They need to sell players, not just Koulibaly. It could be an interesting summer for Napoli because they could sell a lot of players to make up the funds that they've lost lately from COVID-19. But Napoli, if they do sell him, they don't want to sell him for less than his value. Napoli currently value Koulibaly at €90 million, and it's a very high price tag. But right now they know that they're probably not going to get that. Napoli are aware that they're probably not going to get the $90 million that they're seeking because COVID-19, because clubs are aware that Napoli are in a dire financial situation. and they're not really going to have sympathy with Napoli. They're going to pay what they believe he's worth until Napoli and the buying club would negotiate an appropriate transfer fee. So Napoli are holding out to maximize his value, but they can't really afford to hold out too long, because if they wait too long, then Koulibaly may not be agreed to with another club. And in that case, Napoli are in a dire financial situation, having to continue to pay Koulibaly. It's great to keep Koulibaly, one of your best players, and I'm sure that's what they prefer to do, but it may be very difficult to pull off, especially if they don't manage to sell any other players in this transfer window. So Napoli really aren't in a position to refuse an offer close to the 90 million. So say Man United offers 70 million for Koulibaly. Napoli would be pretty short-sighted to turn it down and hold out for more money, because they're not going to get much more money than that. 70 million is a very big price tag for Koulibaly already, so they would probably be smart to sell him for that price tag. So when you analyze this transfer situation, considering Man United are one of the top clubs buying for Koulibaly's signature, Manchester United are in an opposite boat from the Dortmund situation and the Sancho sweepstakes. Dortmund are financially healthy, and they don't really need to sell Sancho. They'll be happy if they don't sell any player this summer and if they keep everything, because they don't need it. And also, Dortmund are in a Champions League next season, so they're going to be able to compensate for the lost revenue from this season. But Napoli need money now. They can't afford to wait. So Man United are in a very advantageous bargaining position with Napoli. The most alarming potential obstacle for Man United would be the competition for Koulibaly's signature, because with word out in European football that Napoli need money, they need to offload players. Koulibaly is certainly a player that could be sold this summer, more so than he's ever been considered to be sold. There will be competition, and Manchester City, United City rivals, have long been in the conversation for Koulibaly for years, and Manchester City are still in the race to sign him now. And even though Manchester City have signed Nathan Ake, the center back from Bournemouth, they're still looking to get better and get even more signings, looking to replace the departed Vincent Kompany. So really, Man United's only pressing obstacle in the sweepstakes for Kalidou Koulibaly would be if anybody else is after him. And there will be a little competition, but only a handful of clubs really can afford to pay the money, to pay a transfer fee for what Napoli are looking for to sell him. But it looks like Koulibaly is probably likely to leave Napoli this summer, not because Napoli want to get rid of him, but because Napoli are in such dire straits right now as a club from the COVID-19 pandemic that they need money now, and that Koulibaly will get them the money that they need. And Man United, if they act quickly, and if they take advantage and they capitalize on the situation, they could get Koulibaly and they could pair him with Maguire, and that would make for an absolutely formidable back line, and that would transform Man United as a team for sure. But the faster the bid is made, the better for Man U, and Napoli will surely try to hold out for as long as they can, but not too long enough where it's too late and they have to keep him and they have to continue to pay his wages. That is it for Koulibaly. Now we're going to move on to Kai Havertz to Chelsea. Now, Kai Havertz has been linked with a move to Chelsea pretty much all of 2020, and the Bayer Leverkusen product has just been knocked out of the Europa League, and one of the reasons that Havertz wanted to play for Chelsea is to play Champions League football, and the deal has really been suspended for most of the summer because Chelsea were still competing for a Champions League spot. Now that they've got it, Havertz does want to go to Chelsea. He's very keen on the move to North London, so it looks like it will happen for Kai Havertz very soon. He wants Champions League football. Chelsea have clinched Champions League football. It's a matter of Chelsea agreeing to a transfer fee with Bayer Leverkusen. And reportedly, Leverkusen want 90 million for Kai Havertz. But right now, it's probably more likely that Chelsea and Leverkusen will agree on a fee of about 70 to 75 million on a final price tag. And that will surely develop in the coming weeks. And it's really only a matter of time. It's not if, but when will Kai Havertz join Chelsea Football Club and leave Bayer Leverkusen. Moving on, let's talk about Juventus, the team that was just knocked out of the Champions League on Friday night, and the team that fired Maurizio Sarri, replaced him with Andrea Pirlo, club legend and Italian World Cup winner, as new manager of Juventus. And it's going to be wholesale changes entering this summer, with plenty of players who need to go out to bring new players to strengthen Juventus' squad. One player they're looking to buy in is Lacazette. Alexander Lacazette, the prolific Arsenal striker. Arsenal right now are looking to raise funds because Aubameyang is also a striker. He's also re-signed with Arsenal. So the club is committed to Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang for the long-term future. And although Lacazette and Aubameyang have an amazing partnership, and they're very good friends as well, Arsenal are looking to offload Lacazette or more assets because they too, like Napoli, are looking to raise more funds because the COVID-19 pandemic has really hurt Arsenal. They have no European football next season as well. Arsenal have had a terrible year. They have no Champions League or Europa League, so it's going to be more difficult for them to get lost revenue back from the pandemic. So Arsenal need funds now as well, and Lacazette would produce a little bit of it, not only from a transfer fee, but it would free up the wages that he makes as well. And Juve is considering Lacazette as a replacement for Gonzalo Higuain, who is one of Pirlo's targets to sell this summer and get rid of out of the club. And Lacazette is viewed as a surplus to requirements in Arsenal, given that they need funds now, and they already have Lacazette and Pepe and Saka, and they have a very young and exciting attacking force. Also, Atletico Madrid are also in the running to get the signature of Lacazette. Right now, there's reports that Atletico Madrid are pitching a swap deal with Lacazette going to Atletico Madrid, while Thomas Partey, the Ghanaian midfielder, would go to Arsenal and fill a need in the midfield for the Gunners there. Moving on with Juventus, more transfer rumors for them. Pirlo reportedly wants to strengthen the midfield. Not surprising considering Andrea Pirlo is a world-renowned midfielding legend. He wants to improve the midfielding Juventus, which is also their most defined weakness on the squad right now. And Isco, in Pirlo's opinion, would be a great addition to the Juventus midfield. It would be about a $60 to $70 million transfer fee that Real Madrid would seek. Isco right now makes $7 million on an annual salary, which may be too high for Juventus unless they offload some players, because they have some players making an awful lot of money who aren't at the quality of Isco, for example. At Juventus, you already have Aaron Ramsey, who was a free transfer last year, and he's making $7 million annual wages. So if you could trade Aaron Ramsey for Isco, which is what Juventus want to do, ideally, that would be best case scenario. Juventus are trying to include Ramsey in a deal which would swap Ramsey over to Real Madrid and bring over Isco to Turin, because it would allow Juventus to essentially replace Aaron Ramsey's salary for Isco, which would be a pretty big upgrade. But no one's really going to go out and give Juventus money for Aaron Ramsey, especially on his wages, because Aaron Ramsey is massively overpaid and he's not really produced for Juventus at all this season. But Juventus are looking to offload Ramsey. They're really looking to offload some dead weight on this team. Juve, one of their biggest problems for their team right now is that they're an old team. They have a lot of dead weight and players that are dead weight making high wages that are going to be very difficult to sell or get rid of in the transfer window. Andrea Pirlo's already named a few players that he wants to move on from in his tenure as Juventus manager. That includes Aaron Ramsey, who makes $7 million annual wages, Gonzalo Higuain, Sami Khedira, Daniele Rugani, Mattia De Sciglio. Those are the players that Pirlo wants out the door. Whether or not Juventus can find a buyer for all of those or any of those players this summer, that is a wait-and-see formality for us, because those are a lot of players who are on the wrong side of 30, who are making a lot of money that other clubs will not be willing to pay. So it'll be a very interesting offseason in Turin for Juventus, and let's see what Andrea Pirlo does in the transfer window. Moving on, let's talk about Tottenham Hotspur, because they have made their first signing of the summer. They have gotten the signature of Pierre-Emile Højbjerg, who they have been seeking all summer long. If you don't know anything about Højbjerg, he's a 25-year-old Danish midfielder who plays for Southampton. And he's played for Southampton for a number of years. He's made over 100 appearances as a Saint in Southampton. He was even the captain for Southampton for a number of years. Interestingly enough, he was stripped of the captaincy armband this season after he told his manager that he wanted to leave Southampton for a Champions League club. That's pretty ironic for Højbjerg, because Spurs this year are not a Champions League club. They finished second to Liverpool in the final last year. They finished sixth this year, and were honestly lucky to make the Europa League, considering Spurs had a pretty woeful season. For most of it, they were in the lower portion of the top 10 all year. Most of the season they were in 9th and 10th until a surge in form at the end of the season got them into 6th and snatched a Europa League spot. But Hojbjerg does get European football, and he might get Champions League football next season if Spurs are in the top 4 for the next Premier League season. And he will wear the number 5 in London, so he will replace Jan Vertonghen, who used to be the number 5 after leaving the club this summer. Interestingly enough, Kyle Walker-Peters, the right back for Spurs, goes to Southampton as well in a separate deal, not an exchange. But Kyle Walker-Peters is a 23-year-old right back who Spurs weren't really seeing fit with their club, didn't really live up to his potential that they were hoping. So now Peters is out the door and Hojbjerg is in for Tottenham. So that's their first signing of the summer. Meanwhile, Liverpool have signed Kostas Tsimikas from Olympiakos. He is a Greek left back, 24 years old, 3 caps for the Greek national team, and Liverpool get the deal done at only $12 million. Has only 1 year of experience, though, as a starter at left back. He's going to be the backup for Robertson. In an ideal world, he'll challenge Robertson for the starting role at left back. It's a great bargain in the end for Liverpool, getting a left back for a very cheap price, a very young prospect who has a very high ceiling, and has an ability to challenge Andy Robertson for the starting left back role with Liverpool if he develops well under Jurgen Klopp. Moving on to another transfer rumor, the last of the segment. Nicolas Tagliafico, the Argentine left back, is wanted by Chelsea, Atletico, and Barcelona. He currently plays for Ajax. He was on that star-studded team last year, which took the world by storm and made it all the way to the semifinals of the Champions League. Right now, Chelsea look the favorites to ink the signature of the Argentine international. Chelsea have already signed one of Tagliafico's Ajax teammates, Hakim Ziyech, and Chelsea's most pressing need right now and their top priority in the transfer market is left back, looking for a replacement for Marcos Alonso. And they've tried and tested the left back market for weeks already this summer. Negotiations really hit the rocks with Ben Chilwell because Leicester were asking for £80 million for him. And the talks with Sergio Reguilon from Real Madrid have stalled for Chelsea as well. But Tagliafico could be a great fit for Chelsea, and it's only really a matter if Chelsea and Ajax can agree to a transfer fee that Ajax and Chelsea are happy with. But Tagliafico would be a great fit, and he would really improve the left-back position for Chelsea if the deal does get done. That is all for the latest transfer rumors and signings this summer. And don't worry, we will be back the next show with the latest transfer rumors, and we'll talk about what has developed in the latest transfer sagas, the latest rumors, and I'll tell you what new signings go forth between now and the next show. Coming up after the last commercial break, it's time to pivot from present to past. We're going to talk about the legacy of Iker Casillas. Stay with us.
This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
Welcome back. It's time for our last segment, and it's time for a throwback. It's time to talk about football history right now. It's time to talk about one of the game's greats who's just hung up his cleats for the last time and has called it a career. Real Madrid and Porto legend, born and raised in Madrid, playing for his hometown team, Real Madrid, Iker Casillas. Casillas has announced his retirement from football at age 39, one of the greatest goalkeepers of our generation and one of the absolute best in our game of all time. Shamefully, most of us have forgotten about how great Casillas was at the top of his game, and we've forgotten about the remarkable story of his career. And considering Casillas is one of the best goalkeepers of our time, it's fair to devote this last segment to really pay tribute to his career and talk about what his legacy really is, and talk about the struggles that Casillas had to go through to make it where he is today, because he has one of the most remarkable stories for a footballing career that you can really imagine. In his career, Casillas is a highly decorated player. For some records that he has, I'll give you a few of those. He has 167 international caps with Spain. That's the most for his country, and it's also the 10th most capped footballer ever for his country, and he had 102 clean sheets for Spain, which is unbelievable. He also has the most ever Champions League appearances with 177. He had 57 Champions League clean sheets, 20 consecutive seasons played in the Champions League. He was the youngest goalkeeper to play and win a Champions League final at just 19 years old. He won 3 Champions League titles as a goalkeeper for Real Madrid, and he has the second most appearances for Real Madrid in club history, only behind Sergio Ramos, who continues to go strong to this day. For Spain, he had one of the most decorated careers you can have as a goalkeeper. He became the first choice keeper at the 2002 World Cup in South Korea and Japan, and became captain in 2008, where Spain won the Euros. And Casillas, that year, in 2008, finished 4th overall in the Ballon d'Or voting, which as a goalkeeper is a feat that not a lot of goalkeepers have ever done. Only Manuel Neuer and Gianluigi Buffon in the past decade have come close to what Casillas has done in the Ballon d'Or voting. And Spain won 3 consecutive international titles at their peak, including the 2008 Euros, the 2010 World Cup, and the 2012 Euros. And in 2012, Casillas set the record for most consecutive minutes without conceding a goal in the tournament, a record which still stands at 509 straight minutes without conceding a single goal. And he represented Spain at 4 different World Cups, 2002, 2006, 2010 when he won, and 2014. And as accomplishments, he's won the UEFA Team of the Year goalkeeper 6 consecutive times from 2007 to 2012, which is the record for a goalkeeper to win that award. And he was named the goalkeeper in the FIFA Pro World 11 5 times, which is also a record for that honor as well. And Casillas, what makes his career so great, as decorated as it is, and as great as he played when he was at his best, what makes Casillas' career and what distinguishes him from the other great goalkeepers is that he really had to fight, and he had to get back up a number of times after being knocked down. Because Casillas got knocked down maybe more than any goalkeeper of his generation had. Let's talk about his trajectory in his career. Because Casillas really was a young prodigy. He was what you would consider Gianluigi Donnarumma to be now. A very young prospect, started pretty much when he was still taking his high school finals with the Italian national team in Milan. A very high ceiling at a very young age. He took over the starting job for Real Madrid at just 19 years old. I'm 19 years old, and I'm going to college and making podcasts and writing blogs. Iker Casillas started and won a Champions League final for Real Madrid just 4 days after his 19th birthday. That is unreal. And that is a feat that not many goalkeepers or any players have ever done. And it's very elite company that Casillas has inserted himself in. And he was also the first goalkeeper to be in the prime iteration of the Galacticos, when the Galacticos were born. The first wave of Galacticos began when Real Madrid brought in Figo and Raul and, of course, Zidane, who's now the manager of Real Madrid. Casillas was the goalkeeper of the Galacticos. We forget about goalkeeper because the Galacticos were about the attacking flair, the great players like Ronaldo and Zidane and Figo, and that was what Real Madrid was remembered by. But Casillas was right in the middle of it as the goalkeeper. And arguably, sadly for Casillas, he really peaked very early in his career. The peak of his career was arguably 10 years ago when Spain won the World Cup in South Africa, because Casillas had a fantastic tournament. He won the Golden Glove for the best goalkeeper in the tournament, and that was when Casillas was at the top of his game, and pretty much ever since it's been a gradual decline until it really hit the rocks a few years later. Casillas' 30s were very turbulent and were the most rocky periods of his career, whereas your 30s are really where the goalkeeper really hits their prime. But that wasn't the case for Casillas, as he had a number of obstacles to overcome. Let's start with 2012-13, when Mourinho was the manager of Real Madrid, which was a very back and forth, up and down period in the club's history. Casillas was one of the few players in football history, one of the few brave footballers out there to challenge the authority and the tactical savviness of Jose Mourinho. And he paid the price for it, because by challenging Mourinho, who is not exactly a people person, mind you, Casillas lost his spot as the number one goalkeeper. In a very difficult time in Real Madrid's history, Casillas was really framed as the scapegoat for the struggles of Real Madrid as their goalkeeper, being seen as not the same player as he was a few years ago, not the same 19-year-old prodigy, not the same World Cup winning goalkeeper for their country. He became the scapegoat of a divided Madrid locker room under Mourinho and lost the support of some of his teammates, some of his fans, and even his coach. His coach completely lost trust in him, lost faith in him, and he really paid the price for challenging Mourinho's authority. And it was very challenging for Casillas to go through that period, especially going into 2014, where Mourinho was sacked and they moved on from him. They welcomed in Carlo Ancelotti into the club, and at this point, Casillas has been staying on the bench for a long time, and it looks like he has to fight for his place to stay in Madrid and fight for the number one spot, with some talented goalkeepers in the fray for Real Madrid, because they had Diego Lopez in the fray as well. So for Casillas, he considered leaving Madrid back in 2013, and what he had his eyes on Brazil. 2014 World Cup in Brazil was approaching. Casillas wanted to be there. He wanted to be able to defend the world crown that Spain had won in South Africa, and he couldn't do that from the bench. He couldn't do that if he stayed at Madrid and he was on the bench as a goalkeeper. But he ended up staying. He wanted to fight for a number one spot at his boyhood club. And ultimately he was rewarded, because Casillas split time with Lopez in goal. Carlo Ancelotti ended up splitting the games between Casillas and Diego Lopez. It was agreed Lopez would play all the La Liga games, all the league matches, while Casillas would play every Copa del Rey game and every Champions League game. And enough for Casillas, oddly enough, Casillas won both competitions that he started. Real Madrid finished third in La Liga that season, but Casillas didn't play in La Liga that year. But in the Champions League and the Copa del Rey, Casillas started every single game, and they won both competitions. They won the double. And Casillas was there to lift the trophy both times. He even got to hoist Real Madrid's La Decima, their 10th Champions League trophy. But then Casillas' career took another left turn in Brazil. In the World Cup, Spain were the defending world champions. They were looking to retain their crown and retain their place as the best team in the world, one of the best teams ever in international football. But unfortunately for Spain, they were knocked out in the group stage, very shockingly so, losing their first game to the Netherlands 5-1. The same team they beat in the final in South Africa was the team that destroyed them 5-1 in the 2014 World Cup, which pretty much sent Spain packing in that edition of the World Cup. And Casillas was at the heart of Spain's failure to advance, because Casillas had probably his worst period of his career, because he played, but he was horrendous. And Casillas admitted the game against the Netherlands, the 2014 opener, was the worst game of his career. And it's hard to argue with him, because he was at the wrong end of a lot of great goals for the Netherlands. He saw Robin van Persie become the Flying Dutchman as he soared over with the miraculous header to open the Dutch scoring. He got humiliated by Ian Robben, who cut in on his right foot and just made him look like he was in no man's land, and then turning the ball over to Van Persie, giving him his second goal, and really collapsing in front of the world, and really showing that he wasn't the same goalkeeper he was, making turnovers, not making saves. Casillas was not the same player that he was in 2010. And he wasn't the Casillas that we knew and loved. And he became the ultimate villain for Spain. He was in a time where Real Madrid was divided and fans were pretty much 50-50 split on who was the scapegoat in Madrid, where Casillas wasn't totally the scapegoat. In Spain, Casillas was the scapegoat because we saw in front of our own eyes how much Casillas fell off a cliff and how he was just not the same goalkeeper that he used to be. And that caused him to be phased out by Rafa Benitez because Ancelotti was sacked by Real Madrid going into 2015 after not winning a trophy at all in 2015. And so they hire Rafa Benitez, who's the new manager of Real Madrid, who didn't stay very long. But Rafa Benitez intended to phase out Casillas. Casillas was not going to start anymore. He was going to be phased out in favor of Keylor Navas, who ended up being a 3-time Champions League winner goalkeeper himself, and one of the best goalkeepers in world football right now for sure. So Keylor Navas took over, and Casillas saw the writing on the wall, and Casillas ended up leaving the club, and he never got a fair goodbye. He never got his farewell tour. He never got a proper send-off from his boyhood club, the club that he's loved ever since he was 5 years old, the club that he's really played for since he was 9 years old, and the club that he made his senior debut with at just 19 years old and won a Champions League final with as a teenager. Casillas was leaving the club, and he didn't get the farewell that he really deserved. And you could see in his press conference, which was really the send-off, a press conference in front of Madrid journalists, was as much as Casillas got as a farewell to the city, to his fans, and to his boyhood club, which is really one of the great shocks of world football, that Casillas could not get a farewell tour that he really deserved. Just a nice goodbye, a nice gesture from the club. It's one of the worst qualities of Madrid that they really don't send off their players in proper fashion. They didn't give a send-off to Casillas. They didn't give it to Cristiano. They might not give it to Sergio Ramos. We'll have to see about that. But Casillas walked out the door pretty much without getting any media craze or any bells and whistles or any confetti. Casillas left the club very quietly, which is really one of the most shocking episodes in the history of Real Madrid. But he doesn't hang them up yet. He's still got some goalkeeping left in him. So he goes to Porto beginning in the 2015-16 season. And he plays at Porto for 5 seasons, wins league titles. He really has the peaks and troughs that he had throughout his career. He starts, he plays very well. He goes back to the Champions League. He makes some great saves. He goes on the bench after a rough spell a little bit. But then what really broke the camel's back for the career of Iker Casillas was when he had a heart attack. In May of 2019, during a training session at the end of Porto's season, Casillas ends up with a heart attack on the training ground. It was a very scary moment for Casillas, he's a very young player, very top fit athlete. But Casillas' condition was stabilized at the hospital and he was okay, and he is okay to this day. But that was the last time that Casillas played football. And Porto decided to give Casillas a role with the club to make sure that Casillas wasn't phased out and he wasn't forced out of the club just because of a health episode, and that Casillas wasn't undeservingly kicked out of the club just because he had a heart attack. They gave him a role in the club so he could be an advisor role, so he could continue to be a part of the coaching staff, be a part of the camaraderie, still be around the players. As he continued his recovery, he was still an integral part of Porto, which is a class act from Porto, continuing to give Casillas a role in the club, which really he ran to when Madrid abandoned him, when he didn't get the send-off that he wanted, and when he was phased out by Rafa Benitez. And he said he would wait until March of 2020 to determine if he would ever play again, to see how he was recovering from his heart attack. And then he would decide if he would continue playing for Porto or if he would just hang him up and retire for good. And ultimately, Casillas retired last week. At his peak, Casillas is one of the best goalkeepers of our generation. When you think of the great goalkeepers of the 21st century, of the past 10 years, you think of 3 names. You think of Gianluigi Buffon, you think of Manuel Neuer, and you think of Iker Casillas. It's those 3 goalkeepers that are really defining this era of world football, and Casillas is right in the middle of it. He will go down as one of the greatest goalkeepers ever to play the game. He was there when Real Madrid won 3 Champions Leagues. He started his career, his senior career, at 19 years old. He's been with the club since he was 9 years old, and he really has defined this generation of football with Real Madrid, with Spain, and with Porto. And Casillas, one of the greatest things about his career and about him as a man is that he taught us that no matter how many times you get knocked down, you can still get back up every single time. And it's important to get back up. Don't let adversity knock you down and keep you down. Because no matter how tough the going gets, you could still always rebound from adversity. That's one of the greatest qualities of Casillas. While he had a very high ceiling that he may have never really reached, and the peak of his career wasn't as sustained or long as some of the other great goalkeepers of our generation, Casillas' resilience and perseverance are attributes that are becoming somewhat of a dying art in sports. And Casillas fought, he clawed to earn his spot in Spain and Real Madrid. He was talented, but he was tough. And that is what makes Casillas one of the legends of our game. And the GSMC Soccer Podcast wishes Casillas a very successful and healthy retirement. We hope to see Casillas back in football very soon. It is rumored that Real Madrid want to bring back Casillas in an advisor or coaching role, which would be a very good act for Real Madrid, bringing back one of their club legends. But that is all the time that we have for today's show, and that is all that I have for you today. So thank you again so much for listening to the GSMC Soccer Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. Before you go, please remember to subscribe to the show and write a nice review that really helps us and spreading our show and our popularity. And if you could please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Until Monday's show, I bid you adieu.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Soccer Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. From movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.